Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Honolulu Cheese Podcast. I am your co host, Ryan, joined by nobody today. I am flying solo. The fellas have stuff going on. Mito is actually recovering from having a wisdom tooth taken out. Yes, you heard that right. Mito got his wisdom tooth taken out. He's not feeling too hot right now. It's a little painful. He called me today to let me know that he won't be jumping on tonight. But I feel it, man. He can't even talk right. He had a lisp going. It was horrible. He's got the suffering succotash going on. So, um, we'll see them back here next week. But I wanted to make sure we got something out for you guys because today were some pretty big press conferences from Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. And I might touch on Campbell a little bit, but I wanted to focus mostly on Brad Holmes because it's the GM's Super Bowl going on right now. You got the combine coming up, drafts heating up. It's right around the corner, and we'll get there soon. So he made some pretty interesting comments today. I just wanted to give my thoughts on them. Firstly, the reporters jumped right into asking him about acquiring other high end pass rushers. This has been the thing since Hutch really came along. And since the injuries last year really made it apparent how much help we need, even with the pickup of Zadarius Smith, that people want more. And people think that that is the last cog that this machine needs to get us over the hump and into the Super Bowl. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. We need a pass rush. It's that simple. I think the end is the second most important position in football, if you ask me, minus quarterback. So we do need more. But Brad Holmes brought up something that I've actually mentioned myself on our show of, okay, let's say you give up a lot of assets to acquire a high-end pass rusher. Now let's say that guy that you just acquired goes down with an injury. Now what do you have, right? Now you have you're right back where you started and you have less toys to play with. And your team is suffering now because you might have given up depth to get that guy. And now that he's down, you need more. And I know, like Jose said this in response to me when I brought this up. He's like, I don't like planning for injury. And he's not wrong. But we saw last year that that happens, especially in football, right? Especially a sport where injuries are so prevalent. And especially after a season where the Lions had so many catastrophic injuries that it was just too much to overcome. So there's a good majority of people out there who believe that without the injuries, we would have made the Super Bowl. And I'm not going to disagree with that. You still got to play the games. The Eagles are, it would have been a tough match, but that's neither here nor there. We'll never know. But the reality is that it cost us dearly last year, and that cannot be argued. So he ended up saying that it's unlikely that we make a splash for a high end guy like that, a la Myles Garrett. That's the name that everyone's talking about. And there's more to come on this, but let's move on a little bit to he mentioned this year being different in that we're picking much later than we were in past years, right? So you're picking 28th, 29th compared to, hovering around that top 15 range. It's different. And not only that, but you had multiple first round picks, right? You think of the Gibbs and Campbell year. You had 2 second round picks, he mentioned, that were graded out as first year or first round picks for them. So I think he's kind of just referencing that this is kind of what GMs of good teams have to go through, right? You don't have the luxury of drafting an Aiden Hutchinson at number 2 anymore. You really have to figure stuff out. But what we do know about Brad Holmes is that he is an extremely aggressive GM on draft day, which has paid off mightily. We've traded with division rivals. We traded up with the Packers, and that ended up being Brian Branch. Thank you. A guy that they would love to have on their team right now. We've traded with the Vikings to move up. We have done well in that regard, and that aggressiveness has greatly benefited us because we're taking guys with first round grades past that round, and that is a thing of beauty, right? Um, so what it does require is Brad Holmes changing his approach to draft day, which again is not a bad thing, but we're really going to see what he's made of if we haven't already, right? This is a new challenge for him that we haven't exactly seen yet because we haven't had the luxury. So I'm all for it. At the end of the day, we trust in Brad. It's as simple as that. And we move. And one thing he mentioned, so I don't know if you guys were listening to Ben Johnson's presser at all um, in Chicago, but man, that guy is just pissing off Lions fans left and right. And every time I hear that guy talk nowadays, I like him a little bit less. And what he said that bothered me the most today was someone asked him about being able to play around with Caleb Williams in a way that you couldn't with Jared Goff when it comes to mobility. And Ben Johnson's whole point was, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said something along the lines of, throughout my coaching career, I haven't had a guy who can extend plays, who can move with his feet in the pocket, and who can scramble the way Caleb does. And it's really exciting for him. He gets really excited talking about it. And he mentioned it even being, I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but even being like frustrated at times because Goff just didn't have that, and he is a pure pocket passer. And when you look at the numbers from last year, you pull up that, neat little sack chart where Goff was one of the most accurate passers in the NFL, and he did a really good job at not taking sacks. When Caleb was, you think of the four quadrants, right? The bottom left, meaning that he did a terrible job in avoiding sacks. So my thing is, and this is the question I would ask Ben Johnson, is okay, great, Caleb is more mobile, but is that helping him avoid getting sacked? Because that's the whole point of what you just said. So yeah, I'm not on the Ben Johnson fan club. I've officially signed off on that a long time ago, and I might be just starting a hate club because man, I don't know what to do with that guy. I feel like since he's left, it's become like dogging Detroit, and I don't know if this is you trying to buddy up to Bears fans and make them like you, but I can tell you that every Lions fan, or every Lions player rather, is going to have Chicago even more circled on their schedule than they already did. It's going to be the reddest Sharpie they can find and just getting in there. And I can't wait to go 2-0 against this team next year. I really can't. And that's not me like making fun of the Bears or whatever for being what they are, but I'm just really not a fan of the way Ben Johnson is like clowning Goff by saying that, especially when he played well for you. Like I just felt a little, a little dirty to me to say, but whatever. Anyway, the original point I was going for was that um, Brad Holmes commented on Hendon Hooker's trajectory. Now, Hendon Hooker has been a weirdly popular name when it comes to trading for Myles Garrett. I think like the popular trade proposal I've seen is a first and second round pick, and we'll give you Hendon Hooker. So this has never made sense to me. Hendon Hooker has not played snaps in the NFL, obviously. Sure, he's got potential. Great. But he's a third round pick at the end of the day who has shown nothing on NFL tape. Okay. I recognize that Cleveland desperately needs a quarterback, but I also recognize that they're probably going to draft one, and they're not trading their best player from the last decade for a first and second round and a pure question mark at quarterback, especially one who is coming off that injury still. I never saw it. But he talked about Hendon Hooker's trajectory and mentioned how it doesn't always happen right away. And he kind of compared and contrasted this to Jared Goff too, about how Jared was good in LA, but he kind of hit a snag and his career, faltered, for lack of a better word. And then he came here and we really saw him shine. And he mentioned Hendon Hooker even starting out of Virginia Tech, getting a slow start there. Tennessee, he kind of worked his way up, being set back by the injury he got heading into the draft. Now you went from like a first, second round pick to a third round pick, and now you're kind of redshirting twice for the Lions, and you don't even know where you're going to play in a year or two. There's a lot going with that. So I think I liked hearing him talk about it because we know nothing about Hendon Hooker, past the fact that he's a young guy with potential. And I like that he's kind of sitting in the back of Brad Holmes' mind. And I wonder what's going to happen next year with our backup situation. Like, is Hooker going to be the backup? I don't know. I hope so. And honestly, if he's not number 2 in line next year, I'm starting to get a little concerned about where his career is headed. Like, are you just going to be a third stringer for multiple years and we don't know what's going on with you? I don't know. But I just hope that he can show enough when the time comes to get that started. So, moving on, and we know how close Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are, and they see eye to eye on almost everything. But I really like how Brad gave Campbell a lot of credit into hiring the coaches he hired and the spot that Dan Campbell was put in by what happened to our coaching staff after this year ended. When both of your coordinators leave and your positional coaches are getting plucked from day one, like literally we lost to Washington and then like the next day it felt like we were losing coaches. For him to kind of go through that process and come out with strong names, good feel, they're all about we want to find the guys who fit our chemistry and the way we want to build this thing. It's not just about getting the big names. It's not just about getting the guys with the best reputations. It's about, are they a fit for us? And Dan Campbell mentioned doing so many interviews and ultimately finding the right guys. And also recognizing that the guys we lost, like, it sucks to lose them. Like, Terrell Williams was spoken so highly of by Brad Holmes and really everyone across the NFL. And even Ben Johnson, that trader, Aaron Glenn, and all these guys, But I thought it was just cool to give credit to Dan Campbell on something that I feel like head coaches, like, it kind of goes missed a lot. The work that goes into hiring people, and anyone who's listening who's ever interviewed anybody or been on a panel where they have to decide who gets hired and who doesn't, it's not easy. It's not, and it's hard to pick between really good candidates. So I have full faith in our guys. We did it once, we could do it again, and that's kind of where I'm at with that. Next, an interesting point he mentioned, and this is something that is going to drive fans crazy when it happens, but all of them are going to nod their head in agreement when they hear the quote. And basically saying that you can never have too many explosive players on offense. And everyone listening is going to say, yeah, of course. Like, why would that even be a thing? But I want to take you back to when Jahmyr Gibbs and J-Mo were drafted. And especially Gibbs, because at that time, we still had DeAndre Swift on our team. And I believe, yeah, that was right when we had Monty or Jamal. I don't know. I don't remember the timeline that was, but we had a good backup regardless. And we drafted Gibbs, and people went nuts. And they had reason to, right? We had other needs. And it's like, dude, you already have a good running back room. What are you doing? Right? But then you look at the tape and you're like, okay, like, this guy's clearly more talented than Swift. At least he was in college. Like, we'll see what we can get out of him, right? We'll see how this goes. And then it didn't take long to see how good Jahmyr Gibbs really was and how much he adds to your already good offense. And Brad Holmes has said this from his opening press conference as GM, that he's a big believer in building on your strengths. We all, like, I think it's human nature to want everything to be even, right? This is like the safe way of playing it. Hey, I have a good old line. I don't need to draft a lineman. I'm going to go draft a linebacker. Oh, okay. Now we have good linebackers. Now I want to draft a really good corner. Brad Holmes has never thought this way. It's always been, like, for lack of a better word, best player available. And I don't even know if he's used that exact term. I'm sure he has at one point, but it doesn't even matter. He's taking the guy who he thinks is the best fit for our football team. You know, I'll call it BFA, best fit available. And that's what they're really all about. We want guys who fit what we are doing and who we are. And it's kind of like the same thing we heard with the coaching staff, right? So when it comes to adding explosive players, that's exactly who we are. We have an explosive offense we have for years. Let's keep going. Like, yeah, we do need a pass rusher, let's say. But am I going to sit here and be mad if we draft an explosive receiver in the early rounds? Absolutely not. I will go on record saying that. So when people are losing their minds if that happens, let's remind them how valuable a good receiver is in a explosive offense. Like we saw JMO finally come into his own this year, and people were still pissed about that pick heading into this year because we hadn't seen it yet. But when you do see it and you see the impact it has on any given game, it's a thing of beauty. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I agree with that 100% to build on your strengths. And last but not least, he mentioned the planning stages for Aiden Hutchinson's extension, and he kind of tied this all back into what getting a new pass rusher is going to look like. So Hutch is not going to be cheap, like most obvious statement ever. But that's coming, and it makes me very happy that we've already locked up guys like Panay and Amon-Ra and Goff, and that we're not going to get screwed with all these big contracts at the same damn time. Like that would drown us. But also recognizing that you can't let Hutch go, obviously. And that means that dude, you can't have it all. Like you can't have your cake and eat it too. And like I'm watching this whole presser on YouTube and I go to the comments right after the video is over, and the top comment says, whatever you can do to get Myles Garrett has to be done. And it's like, bro, were you not listening to a word that Brad Holmes just said? Like, he's literally telling you every reason why that Myles Garrett trade will not happen. And sitting here right now, I feel like there's a 2% chance that the Lions trade for him, if that. Because news also just dropped today that Cleveland has no intention of trading him, albeit with his trade request, Myles Garrett, that is. Like, they're not doing it unless they get like a king's ransom for him, and they very well may. I don't think it'll be from us. And Holmes has never been that GM to make those splash trades. Like the biggest one is like the Za'Darius Smith trade, and that was cool, but it's not like multiple first round picks. It ain't a good player in your future. You know, those were mid round picks that we gave up for Za'Darius Smith, and it worked out kind of like as well as you could have hoped. So I really think people just got to get off this Myles Garrett train. I'm not one to piss on anyone's parade. I just don't think that it's going to happen. And if he ultimately does get traded and people are pissed about it, dude, you should have known it ain't happening. That's kind of where I'm at. And I'm just some dude with a podcast. Like, I don't know more than the press does. I don't know more than the Lions intel does. I truly, as a fan, like, don't see a way that happens without costing us a big part of our future. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. This is kind of a short episode. I just wanted to get on and do something for you guys about the presser. The combine starting soon. We're just wrapping up the dead days of the NFL, but the NFL is a machine that never turns off, dude. It is crazy. So, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Check us out on YouTube. We'd love to hear your thoughts there. And just what do you think of Brad Holmes? Like, do you think that he is going to keep having drafts like this where we're hitting and hitting and hitting? And I think last year was really the first year that we took a lot of project players. So I just want to know how you guys feel going into it. Like, how comfortable are you with where we sit in the draft based on the needs we have? Do you feel comfortable getting a good pass rusher at 28 if that's what we ultimately decide to do? Do you feel comfortable if we add an offensive lineman as a depth piece because we know Taylor Decker doesn't have forever? A lot of questions are going to be answered, man. But at the end of the day, we trust in Brad, FTP, Ben Johnson, kick rocks, all that good stuff. So I don't like Ben Johnson right now, guys. I'm sorry. But that's where I'm going to call it. Yeah, and as always, just let us know what you think. Give us a sub on YouTube if you haven't already. We post a lot of exclusive content there that may not necessarily end up on Buzzsprout or Apple Podcasts or Spotify. So just, give us a buzz on there. And as always, may your Kool-Aid stay blue and your head stay cheesy. Get well soon, Mito. Peace out.